I think he might even recognize that it is lost. He's just saying that like, oh, we're losing it, but it's correct. They have lost it. This is why you see the polling numbers come out of Israel and you're like, what the f? It was the breaking point. Yeah, we're going to get into the Israel-Hezbollah stuff in a second. But before then, let's take a look at a guy that I have brought forward on this broadcast many times over. He's the former head of Shin Bet, Ami Ayalon. He is one of the people that I famously bring up all the time. One of the people that famously said, if I was a Palestinian, I would literally be a terrorist, alongside Ehud Barak.
Elon, welcome back to our program.
He's on Christian Amanpour's broadcast, and here he spells out the reasons as to why Benjamin Netanyahu is going back on his own quote unquote ceasefire proposal.
Thank you.
So, can you explain what your prime minister has been saying to Israeli media about his view of a partial end to this? He said he's ready for a partial deal with Hamas for some of the hostages. Now, as far as I was aware, the people of Israel's first goal is to get all of the hostages back. The so-called Israeli plan that the Biden administration stated was precisely for that, all for all. Some people
Looks like Hamas is going to leave Qatar for Iraq. Not sure what that means. Wait, what? No way.
like the Hostage Families Forum, they condemn it. They say he's just walked back from everything. What's a partial deal for the partial release of hostages?
It's the only way for him to survive in power. That's it. It's the only way for him to make sure that the war will not come to an end. And this is what he's doing. And I think that he really believes that we do not understand, but we do understand, most of the Israelis. And today, our prime minister do not represent the people of Israel. In a recent poll, I have here the figures, 76% of the Israelis believe that he should resign immediately. 65% demand elections today. And 75% believe that the only way to end this war is by a political achievement that will enable us to bring back all the hostages. Second, to end the war. And third, to create a regional coalition that will create a better reality and more safety to Israel.
I am really surprised by what you said in that he doesn't want to end the war.
Right.
I mean, that sounds crazy to me.
Why?
That sounds crazy to me because my job demands me to act like it's shocking, despite the fact that I have had, over the course of the past 9 months, numerous professionals, including on the American side, tell me exactly the details as to why Netanyahu is personally invested in maintaining this war so that he doesn't go to prison. It's like, yeah, it's your job, I guess. And I suspect that's the reason why you're confused here. But unless you got bludgeoned in the head with like a blunt object numerous times before coming on this iteration of the same broadcast that you've been doing for the past 9 months, this should not be confusing. This is, I think, the least confusing thing.
Well, why? Why not? Israelis are being killed. Palestinians are being killed. Israel's losing its moral high ground. It's becoming a barrage.
Its moral high ground, which it never had as an apartheid state. Its moral high ground.
We call it toxic leadership. In academia, toxic leadership is a great charisma.
Yeah, this is a crisis of leadership. This is why I don't really like him that much. Yeah. This is why liberal Zionism is oxymoronic. It's like saying liberal Nazi. Okay? And ultimately, like, you're looking for a scapegoat. You're looking for a scapegoat. You're looking for someone to blame, someone to shift the blame to. And that someone that you're shifting the blame to, more often than not, is just gonna be like, oh, it's just like this one guy. That must be the reason. It's this one guy, guys. It's not the entire batch that is rotten. We see this with like police all the time. Oh, it's you know, it's just with one bad apple, one rotten apple. It's like, no, dude, it's the whole bunch. The entire bunch is rotted. The entire foundations of Israeli society is built upon the forcible displacement and ethnic cleansing operations done to an indigenous population. It's 750,000 people that were forcibly displaced from their ancestral homes. Like, that's how Israel started.
Of a person who lead many people, but he leads them to the wrong place, to the end of Zionism. This is what he's doing. You have to understand that in the first cabinet meeting, when we went to war after the 7th of October, and we had to go to war because after the massacre, etc., it was a war of defense. But the decision of do not discuss the day after. What is the meaning? I'll tell you something. In this war, when you send your people, your youngster, to kill, and many of them will die there, when you tell them that there is no political goal to this war, immediately what happened? The war becomes the end and not the mean. Now, when the war becomes the end, the goal of itself, this is exactly what we see today in the Middle East. We know how to start wars. This government do not know and do not want to end this war.
Okay, I'm going to get back to Gaza in a second, but Netanyahu himself said in this so-called interview conversation that they might be prepared for another war, that the real so-called kinetic combat phase in Gaza could be coming to an end, but that they will move troops and forces to the north. That means Hezbollah. Are you prepared? Do you think this is going to happen, a full-scale war again a la 2006 with Lebanese Hezbollah?
Whether I think it is a real scenario, if we shall not change our perception of ourselves and the Middle East, it is a real scenario. Not because somebody wants, because this is the only option. If we believe only in power, if we believe that war is not the last option, is the first and only option, this is what we shall see. Our security doctrine should be based on two pillars. Yes, we shall always have to maintain and to preserve a huge military power, but it will never be enough unless we understand diplomacy, unless we can speak in two languages. We shall not be secure and we shall lose our identity.
And why has it taken 8 months for the people like yourself? I know you've been saying it because you're out of, governing Shin Bet, etc. right now.
No, because I'm in a minority in my people.
Okay, you're a minority.
Okay.
But it's suddenly becoming out there, like the head of the IDF has clearly empowered his spokesman, Admiral Hagari, who said last week that it's just throwing sand into the eyes of the Israeli people, saying that you can defeat Hamas. More and more people are beginning to say what you're telling me now, that there needs to be a day after plan.
Yes, I don't blame, but I think that I expected more from our generals. I still remember during the first Intifada, when Rabin gave us an order, instructed us to break the bones and
Ami, I alone is a Zionist to his core, but despite all this, I kind of like the guy to an extent. Some I'll, of course, disagree with, but some on basic points, he's right and sharp. No political goal, only war for the sake of destruction. He's basically correct on here, chat, 8 months in. Yeah, no, that's why I said he's like, he's like a valuable asset, I would say, on, look, he's repeating a lot of the shit that I've been saying, okay? Obviously, when he says it, there is a level of authority. This is why people were saying to watch Miz's stream. Dude, come on. We're literally listening to a former head of Shin Bet talk to American mainstream media, basically undermining the war effort entirely. And you're over here being like, you have to watch Miskiv's stream. Like, that's crazy. Okay, he's listening to Shai Davide. Got it. Like, come on.
Oh, wow.
I got it. Fuck ass haircut too.
Actually, now just prove the point. The Jewish establishment closed the banks of rappers. That is the oldest.
I got it. It's Shai Davide. Okay, let's continue. Is Shai good or bad? He is one of the worst. Let me tell you this way. He called his own students Judenrat capos. He called the Jewish students of Columbia that dare criticize Israel's apartheid practices Judenrat capos. Okay? He said that they were Nazi collaborators. That should tell you everything you need to know about this freak monster who specifically cries for attention and regularly does it and is unimaginably annoying. Yeah, also his dad literally is like an arms dealer for Israel. So
some commanders did it, literally. And the chief of general staff told publicly to Rabin, Mr. Defense Minister, this is not a military phenomena. This is a social, political, violent phenomena. And I expected our generals to say it as early as possible. The moment that the cabinet accepted this decision, not to discuss the day after, it was clear that this is a never-ending war. And they should do it much earlier.
Do you think, because you saw the justified horror that was unleashed over the weekend when a picture of a wounded Palestinian tied to the hood of one of...
yeah, obviously he's a Zionist, but he's an interesting character. I alone made this realization that the occupation isn't just a blemish on Israel's image, which is usually the liberal Zionist position, for the record. This is why Time Without an Ovo was making this distinction. I alone doesn't just think he's like a Yitzhak Rabin type in that situation. Like he's the furthest liberal or leftist you will get to while still maintaining Zionism, which is, it's not just a blemish on Israel's image, because most liberal Zionists will be like, you know, the occupation is like hurting our chances of maintaining an apartheid or maintaining like some kind of dominance in the region. Whereas like there are people who recognize that if you want permanent security, you have to give security assurances and sovereignty to the Palestinian population. The Yitzhak Rabin position, basically, that kickstarted the so-called peace process negotiations. Yitzhak Rabin himself was a monstrous piece of shit to the Palestinians, very famously as interior security. He was known as like the bone breaker, breaking tens of thousands of children's hands deliberately because, the first Intifada was symbolized with resisting against the Israeli apartheid, the Israeli occupation, with like children throwing rocks. So in order to make sure that they could never throw rocks again, they would break their hands with the deliberate measure. Yitzhak Rabin is also known as like the great peacekeeper in that circumstance. Ami Ayalon is similar in that where he recognizes that this is what is needed for permanent security for Israeli Jews, the two-state. The dynamics of the occupation exist. It'll mean that the end of Zionism. He's right about this, and it's why genuinely he wants a two-state solution. Or like an Olmert, I think more accurately, like Olmert always speaks to J Street and says, guys, this creeping annexation thing will eventually mean a single binational state, and with that, the end of Zionism. Rabin didn't go this far, I don't think. Yeah. They're right, by the way. They're right. Like, they're literally right. This is why I always say these kinds of actions are going to lead to the end of this project. Like, because they're seeing the writing on the wall. They're recognizing that this is like not sustainable. And if it's not sustainable, as we are seeing and as we are repeating over and over again, they see it too. They are able to cut through that feverish attitude that Israeli society has currently. We can be as violent as we want. We can be as cruel as we want. And everyone that says no can suck our dicks, right? Suck our collective dicks. Fuck you. You're all anti-Semitic. There are some who can cut through that fever pitch and go, no, you don't understand. People literally don't like that we are doing insane shit like this. If we want to keep doing Israel stuff, we got to dial this back. We have to do like some kind of state, something, some sovereignty for the Palestinians, because we can't keep going like this. They will keep blowing our shit up. They will keep resisting violently. And then every single time we retaliate, we lose more social capital. We lose more political capital. And if we continue along this trajectory that we've been continuing on, we're not going to have any allies left.
Of your military vehicles was was driven out of the Jenin area, and the Palestinians accused your forces of using them as a human shield.
What do you mean Palestinians accuse your forces of using them as a human shield? Like, how can you show this image and try to justify it, Cristiano Amanpour, you freak?
The Israeli military then shortly thereafter said those forces violated orders and standard operating procedures. They'll be investigated. Not many people have faith in the investigation because there's very rarely those investigations happen. But what's happening? I mean, are you saying that this war, without any political end, is also causing this kind of stuff, including the selfies of your forces inside Gaza, taking pictures with the rubble, with this, with that? I mean, it's just not very nice at all.
No, it's horrible.
Do you feel they're losing their morality, their humanity?
Not they. We are losing. We are losing our identity as people, as Jews, and as human beings.
Did you ever think you would say that? You're the former head of Shin Bet.
I mean, he's been saying that. This is not the first time he's saying that. He's right, and he's been saying that. It's not the first time I've heard him say these things.
Yes.
Did you ever think you'd get to a point?
I said it many times.
Yeah, see?
And I said it in the Shin Bet when we tried to think of our code of ethics. I said, when we go to war, people do not think, when you send us to war, you do not send us to negotiate, you send us to kill. Now, we are born with the idea of you shall not kill. And now you tell me, okay, you go to war, kill all the enemies. Now, the idea that I have the right to kill. Now, with the time, it becomes a nature. We do not ask why. The only question that we ask when we go to war is how to kill, whether we should use a knife or a gun or a missile. It's become a second nature, and this is a danger in every war. And we saw it, during all the history. What Americans did in Iraq and Afghanistan, what we did in the past, unless we understand that every war must end. This is what we shall see. We shall lose our identity as a democratic human beings, and we shall create a reality of never-ending war.
So, given that there might be something big breaking...
For the record, I think that it is lost. I think he might even recognize that it is lost. He's just saying that, like, oh, we're losing it. But it's correct. They have lost it. This is why you see the polling numbers come out of Israel and you're like, what the like, since October 7, it was the breaking point.
Out against Lebanon. I mean, look, this is what one of the most respected military analysts in Israel, Amos Harel of Haaretz, says. Nasrallah, who is obviously the head of Hezbollah, apparently suspects that Israel is headed for a general war and is preparing his organization for that possibility. You think that's right?
Yes. It's the only rational decision.
And then what happens?
We shall have war.
And then?
We shall have war.
And after that?
And we shall have more war. And we shall stop, and later we shall have more war. We have to understand, there are two blind spots for us Israelis. Until today, by the way. What should we learn after the 7th of October? Which was probably the most horrible moment in our history. We should learn, first of all, that we shall not have security as long as we shall not end occupation. This is what Hamas told us. And we shall not have democracy as long as we shall not end the occupation. Now, we refuse to see it. We see it today, if I read the polls, more than we saw it, and this is the opportunity. Our government do not see it. Yoav Gallant do not probably understand it, but he doesn't have the courage to say it because he's base. He has to be elected. So the political power today is not in the hands of the political leaders. The political power is somewhere in the street. And we, people in the street, we do not understand it. And we understand it more and more, and this is why the demonstrations are very, very important. But this is why the international community has a role. Because the international community has to understand, yes, we have to save ourselves from ourselves. But it is not a conflict between Israelis and Palestinians anymore. It is a regional conflict that will create a huge impact on the international community.
Do you think President Biden and the administration and Israel's friends are saving the Israeli political leaders from themselves?
What does he specifically mean by end the occupation? He means a two-state solution, like the real one that I don't know the exact details of what he wants, but like probably when people talk about that, they mean like 67 boundaries, two states, sovereignty for the Palestinians, right? Israel proper, some means of travel between Gaza and the West Bank. These are things that will never happen, for the record. And the reason why it will never happen is because since that was originally suggested, and this is like primarily Benjamin Netanyahu's doing, for the record, because he just came back and forth over and over again and beefed up the settlements, Israel has basically created a non-contiguous, like complete, like Bantustan structure, like we have seen in apartheid South Africa in the West Bank. There is no statehood. The settlements have rendered Palestinian statehood impossible, okay? Unless you are actively talking about purging violently 750,000 Israeli Jews from the West Bank, almost 1 million Israeli Jews from the West Bank and occupied Jerusalem, it will never happen. I've shown you what the maps look like. B'Tselem and many other human rights organizations have documented the way in which the Israeli settlements in the West Bank have been purposely created with the goal of cutting off Palestinian villages from one another. It is an impossible prospect.
Themselves or not?
I think that they are trying to do their best. The way I understand the American leaders and president, he has to be elected. And he's blamed from both sides. So I'm not here to give him any. I think that he is the only leader.
Yeah, Hasan, I don't think people fully understand what you mean when you say settlements too. Like my home is in East Jerusalem. It's a village. Imagine that village surrounded on all four sides by full-blown Israeli-only cities. These are settlements. Yeah. When we say settlements, I think people think like a shitty-ass shack or something. Like these are full-blown developed cities with a highway structure cutting through Palestinian villages that Palestinians on their own internationally recognized land cannot use.
Who really believe that we can create a different and a better reality. And he's doing all what he can in order to help us to save ourselves.
Can I ask you something? Because I was struck by what you said. This is what Hamas told us. You know, you said the business about ending the occupation, etc. I recently spoke with, I'm sure somebody you know very well, the doctor Yuval Biton, who saved Yahya Sinwar's life in hospital, then became an intelligence officer in the prison service. He claimed that Israel, all of you or all, Mossad, Shin Bet, IDF, government, just didn't listen when people like him, who were talking to Hamas every single day, were saying, this is what they think, this is what they say, this is it. He said, Hamas learned a lot about Israel, but not vice versa. I'm just going to play what he told me on this regard.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the Israeli leadership did not study Hamas, and a lot of people among us, even in the intelligence service, did not know and learn Hamas well enough. All we needed to do was listen to them. Our attitude towards Hamas was arrogant. We dismissed Hamas, and Hamas said everything it intended to do, but we didn't want to listen.
Do you agree with that?
Yes, of course. I don't agree to the fact that all of us, because all the leaders, all the directors of the Shin Bet said it again and again. You know, I met Ronen during 2 years before.
Who's Ronen?
The 7th. Ronen is the director of the Israeli Shin Bet today. During the last 2-3 years. And I told him, look, I understand that, politicians and political leaders, they are telling you exactly the policies that you should follow. But you have to tell them again and again and again, every day, every meeting, that this policy will lead us to a wave of violence. And he told me, Ami, this is exactly what I'm telling him. But Prime Minister did not listen. Why? I know why. Because he preferred his political survival on the future of Israel. That's it.
You have said survival requires a political solution and a two-state solution. As you said, Hamas will only be defeated by a war, in this war of ideas,
right,
which is offering the Palestinians hope. Now, we've heard leaked tapes and things like that. Netanyahu's most nationalistic Orthodox coalition members, people like Smotrich, Ben-Gvir, etc., they, Smotrich, there's a leaked record, he spoke about preventing the occupied West Bank from becoming part of an independent Palestinian state, and he's getting a lot of power and putting more settlers on and empowering the settlers. Is that going to work? Are they going to have the final say?
Probably. If we shall not have the power and the courage to change our policy, they will succeed. Now, Israel, we did not have state for 2,000 years. We were born, all my generation, we were born to a reality in which a state is something obvious. It is not, unless we fight against everybody who do not believe in Israel as a Jewish democracy. We shall not have Israel as a Jewish democracy. And unless we shall understand...
You're talking about fighting internal Israeli opponents of a Jewish democracy.
Unless we shall understand, again and again I'm saying it, that if we shall not end the occupation, we shall not have security. And if we shall not end this occupation, we shall not have democracy. We shall not have democracy, and we shall not have security. And this is the end of the Zionist dream, because the Zionist dream is a state of for Israel with a specific identity. It is a Jewish democracy. Our parents did not come from Arab states and Europe in order to create a totalitarian regime, and nobody will accept it. Palestinians are...
This is why it's like silly. This is why it is silly. Israel can be a democracy or a Jewish state. It can't be both. That's it. And that's not just my assessment. John Kerry said that. You can have one or the other. You can have a Jewish majority ethno state, or you can have a democracy. You can't have a Jewish majority ethno state and have a democracy at the same time. Isn't that what he's saying? Not necessarily. No, he's saying he wants a Jewish democracy, as in he wants a Jewish state, a Jewish ethno state, and the only way to reach that is if there is a Palestinian state with sovereignty.
Are demanding freedom, and they will fight for the end of occupation, and unless we shall understand that this piece of land is ours, but it is not only ours, we have only two options: to divide it and to keep our identity, or not to divide it, and to lose our identity and to lose our security as well.
So does this worry you then? Because this is Netanyahu again in this conversation about moving from the first, second, and now the third stage in Gaza. The third.
What people need to understand is that we are seeing the material manifestation of a two-state scenario. The problem is apartheid, where one vassal state party is getting unquestioned support from a superpower. A so-called two-state solution will be all aesthetic, same material reality. Absolutely.
Third step will be the creation of a new security regime in the Gaza Strip, the removal of Israel's responsibility for day-to-day life there, and the creation of a new security reality for the citizens of Israel. What do you think that means? Do you think that means carving out a whole piece of Gaza? Oh, okay.
This is what it means.
Wait, what?
What do you think that means? Do you think that means carving out a whole piece of Gaza?
Oh, he said bullshit. That's why they bleeped it. No, he said bullshit while she was saying Gaza. You can see it. He mouths it. He goes, bullshit.
Means. Do you think that means carving out a whole piece of Gaza?
He goes, it's bullshit.
Oh, okay.
This is what it means. For Netanyahu, he is lying to us because Netanyahu is not stupid. He's the brightest person that I met. But this is toxic leadership. He is selling us something that he knows that will not work. He knows the Palestinians. He knows that they will go on fighting. He knows that they will not accept any Israeli leadership that does not give them their national liberty, end of occupation. He knows it. But he's trying to sell us something that probably, but...
This guy doesn't like Netanyahu, by the way. He's not saying my genocide dare is a genius. He's saying that because his goal is ethnic cleansing, his goal is like, or a permanent occupation or a permanent state of war, he is like, in a very smart way, using what is in front of him to continue that goal. He's saying this is Benjamin Netanyahu's plan, which is, it is that plan. That is his plan. It's what he's doing.
Most Israelis, again, he do not represent the 75% of his people.
Finally, if a war happens a full scale between Israel and Hezbollah, there are those who are very concerned, like United States sources apparently, that the Iron Dome, your anti-missile shield, could be overwhelmed in the opening strikes. Do you worry about that?
Yes, of course. There is no ultimate solution. And the capabilities of Nasrallah and Hezbollah is totally different from what we faced in the past. As long as we are fighting in Gaza, he will have the legitimacy to go on fighting. But the moment that we shall achieve the end of war or ceasefire, he do not have the right to go on fighting because we do not understand. You know, Palestinians are suffering, thousands of them. You know, millions probably led from their homes, and the whole south of Lebanon is destroyed. So yes, they will not do anything against him but he represents the Shia community and they are dying. He represents the Lebanese national aspirations and they know that he will bring them death and
Where can you buy those dog tags? Asking for a non-Zionist friend? Are you joking? What the fuck those dog tags? And fuck him for wearing those dog tags.
humiliation. So we have to see it connected. And this is why it is so important. It is not only important to bring back our hostages.
Bro, I'm gonna be 100%, 150% honest with you. I'm gonna keep it a $150. That is akin, in my opinion, is wearing the Swazi armband. Okay, straight up. I don't see that any other way. I see that shit immediately. People make hay about the green headband, right? Like, oh, you're wearing a Hamas headband? No shot. All that represents historically, at least like the green headband right now inside of Gaza represents resistance. Okay, sure, there are a lot of instances where it is represented killing. It is represented even killing civilians at certain points. Okay, that resistance has not always been infallible or perfect, but that has always been offensive. This is why I say the Israeli Defense Force is the Israeli Occupation Force. That's why many pro-Palestinian people say IOF instead of IDF. Okay, rocking the IDF dog tag to me is akin to wearing the armband with a swastika on it or a totem cove. Okay, because the goal of the Israeli occupying force has always been to violently remove, before Israel even was a state, the early Zionist brigades. The goal was always the same, okay, which is ethnic displacement of all of the indigenous population living in that land and to maintain the occupation.
That this is the moral victory that we want to achieve immediately. It is important to understand that unless we shall end this war in Gaza, we shall not create a better reality in the north.
Ami Ayalon, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyway, so, I mean, he's right. He is On May 19th, yeah, this is the other aspect of the Area C. On May 29th, Smotrich reaches an agreement with the civil administration to pass all civilian matters in Area C, construction, infrastructure, and demolitions, and more, away from the military and towards an appointee in the defense ministry appointed and responsible to Smotrich as a minister in the defense ministry. There's a name for when a civil government exerts control and sovereignty onto an occupied territory. Annexation, not de facto, de jure annexation, like legal annexation, which is ultimately illegal, obviously, but yes. And that's precisely what's happening, which is, weird to think about because, like, obviously the entirety of the West Bank was basically under this, but Area C is like the last semblance of like the Bantustan. It's not enough that you have a Bantustan. It's not enough that you have a Bantustan. You literally are just taking it over. You're taking over the Bantustan and making it yourself. It's de jure, as in the law. I mean, just today, he literally said his political goal and motivation is to annex the West Bank, and he's working on it. Yep. 100%.